When we think of the ancient world, our minds almost always jump straight to Rome or Persia, right? But nestled down in the southern highlands of Yemen was a kingdom that absolutely rivaled them in wealth and influence. So let's dive right into this explainer about the Himyarite Kingdom. We're going to track its rise as a total superpower, and more importantly, uncover the newly discovered and frankly shocking force that brought it to its knees.
To really get the scale of this, you have to realize that for an incredible 1,400 years, pre-Islamic Arabia was ruled by supra-tribal polities. Basically, these were massive confederations of tribes working together. That is a huge span of human history. And closing out this entire era was Himyar, reigning as the undisputed powerhouse from the late 3rd all the way to the early 6th century CE. They essentially took this tribal network and evolved it into a highly sophisticated centralized political machine.
So the big question we're tackling today is how a society this wealthy and advanced just vanished. I mean, the Roman writer Pliny the Elder literally called them one of the richest nations in the world. Yet, during the 6th century, this mighty empire completely dissolved, leaving a massive power vacuum that would honestly change the entire course of human history. But to understand how they fell, we first need to understand how they got so big in the first place.
Section 1. The Forgotten Arabian Empire.
Himyar's expansion was nothing short of relentless. Starting way back around 110 BCE, they emerged as their own independent kingdom. And from there, they systematically absorbed everyone around them. They conquered Saba around 25 BCE, took Qataban around 200 CE, and absorbed Hadramaut by 300 CE. By the early 4th century, they had pulled off something unprecedented. They completely united the Southern Arabian region for the very first time. And location was absolutely everything for them. They sat perfectly at the crossroads of international trade, linking the Mediterranean, the Middle East, and India. They became this massive hub of global wealth, largely because they supplied the Roman Empire and the rest of the known world with insanely valuable aromatics. We're talking frankincense and myrrh. If you were burning incense in a temple in pagan Rome, there is a very, very good chance it came straight from Himyar.
Section 2. Masters of the Desert.
But here's the catch. Despite all that international trade wealth, their day-to-day survival and regional economy were utterly dependent on rain-fed agriculture. Water was their most precious limited resource, so they had to master this incredibly delicate system called runoff irrigation. It was a matter of sheer survival, and honestly, the true bedrock of their empire.
To make this runoff irrigation work at an imperial scale, they built absolutely mind-blowing infrastructure. We're talking vast, terraced fields carved right into the hillsides, and huge hydraulic structures, most famously the massive Merib Dam. But all of this came with a huge vulnerability. Keeping those terraces and dams from falling apart required constant, endless maintenance. You needed a highly organized, centralized workforce and total social stability to manage it all. And most critically, this entire fragile system relied on a strict 2-season rainfall cycle, in the spring and summer. If the rain didn't show up, the whole system would collapse.
Section 3. A radical religious shift.
Right around the late 4th century, at the absolute height of their power, Himyar makes this completely unexpected pivot. They abruptly abandoned their ancient polytheistic gods, deities like the solar goddess Shams, and they actually adopted Judaism. Under the reign of Malkalikarib Yuhamin, right around 380 to 400 CE, Judaism became the de facto state religion. So why do this? Well, historical sources point to a brilliant geopolitical maneuver. It was a strategic way to distance themselves politically from the rapidly expanding newly Christianized Roman Empire and their Christian neighbor Aksum. It was basically a bold statement of independence.
Section 4. The Climate Smoking Gun.
Now we get to the core mystery of this explainer. For decades, historians argued over why this cohesive, powerful kingdom collapsed so incredibly fast in the 6th century. Was it a shift in trade routes? Was it just politics? Well, we finally have a smoking gun, and it comes from a really surprising place: high-resolution stalagmite records from Hoti Cave in northern Oman. By analyzing the isotopes in these rocks, scientists can essentially read the history of ancient rainfall, kind of like reading tree rings. And the data proved, undeniably, that winter-spring precipitation in the region suddenly plummeted. And we are not just talking about a minor dry spell here. The data zeroes in on the absolute most severe drought conditions in the entire Holocene era. That's our current geologic epoch spanning the last 11,000 years. The most intense period of this mega-drought hit exactly between 500 and 530 CE.
So, the bottom line is this: the rain simply stopped.
For a society whose entire existence, its food supply, economy, social order, everything relied on a precise 2-season rainy cycle to feed their irrigation, this extreme aridity was a total death sentence. The environment literally pulled the rug out from under the Himyarite Empire.
Section 5. The dominoes fall. You can just see how the dominoes fall here. First, the drought triggers massive agricultural failure, which leads to starvation and intense infighting among the ruling elites. That internal weakness opens the door for step 2, a major invasion by the Christian Aksumite Kingdom in 525 CE, which pretty much reduces Himyar to a vassal state. Then, without essential authority to maintain the infrastructure, step 3 happens. The colossal Marab Dam catastrophically collapses around 580 CE. This event was so devastating, it actually gets a mention in the Quran. Finally, completely fractured, the territory is conquered by the Sasanian Empire of Persia by 578 CE. Just like that, a 1400-year era of independent Arabian kingdoms was over.
Section 6. The vacuum left behind.
You know the old saying, history abhors a vacuum. The fall of Himyar didn't just end an era, it completely rewired the Middle East. As the researchers note, a cascade of regional, political, and socio-religious transformations occurred over the following decades. With Himyar out of the picture, the rival Byzantine and Sasanian empires aggressively rushed in to fight over this newly fractured Arabian landscape.
But the most monumental shift was happening locally. Without Himyar's massive centralized power dominating the region, new economic and pilgrimage centers suddenly had the breathing room to grow. Most notably, a city in the central western region called Mecca really started to gain influence in the early 6th century. The collapse of Himyar literally set the geopolitical stage for the emergence of Islam in the early 7th century, right at a time when the Byzantine and Sasanian empires had exhausted themselves fighting each other.
It really leaves you with a wild dot to ponder. Think about it. If those stalagmites in Oman had shown steady rain, if the Himyarite Kingdom hadn't starved from drought, if they had stayed a formidable superpower blocking foreign influence, how much of our modern world was shaped simply because the rain stopped falling on Himyar? It's a profound reminder of how deeply human history is tethered to the fragile climate of our planet. Thanks for joining me on this explainer today, and I really hope this gives you a whole new perspective on ancient Arabia.